Now, Rishi Sunak has joined his American counterpart, Joe Biden, in calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The Prime Minister said this morning that the situation in the region is increasingly intolerable and urged Israel to change its tack.
Well, these remarks follow Biden's claims that Israel is making a mistake in how it's handling the war.
I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those three vehicles were hit by drones and taken out on a highway where it wasn't like it was along the shore. It wasn't like there was a convoy moving there, etc. So what I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country.
Well, joining us now is Paul Harris, editor of the Jewish Telegraph. Great to have you back on the show, Paul. Well, there you go. Skeletor thinks that Israel should down tools and essentially let Hamas get away with it all. What do you think about what he said?
That's exactly as I see it. It would be good to see an end to the conflict, but I don't see any offer from Hamas to release the hostages as a deal, part of a deal for Israel to have a ceasefire. Interestingly, Biden is not asking for hostilities to end altogether. He is suggesting a ceasefire. So he must feel that Israel is doing something right somewhere along the line. But why are the hostages not being mentioned in any of this? Why has Biden not raised the question of the hostages and blamed Hamas for holding on to these in the most inhumane way?
Well, Paul, Alex and I still remember what happened on October the 7th. I'm sure you do too. That number of people who do remember that seems to be getting smaller and smaller. We still stand with Israel. However, the leaders of the big Western nations, certainly Britain and America, seem to be pulling the rug from under Netanyahu's feet. Your Oppo, your great rival, I'm sure, Jake Wallace-Simon, the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, he's got an article in the new edition of The Spectator magazine in which he says that due to the attitude of America and Britain now, as I say, basically speaking out against a country that's supposed to be our ally, Israel, Jake says Hamas is now winning the war. And Israel cannot succeed without the support of America and Britain. Why are these leaders of both America and Britain deserting Netanyahu in his hour of need?
Well, I would say Hamas are winning the PR war, definitely. Whether they're winning the war is another matter. I'm pretty sure they're not. It's very easy for Western powers to interfere at a distance and tell Israel what to do. But ultimately, only the Israeli government can look after its own people and knows the true state of what is happening. Hamas are still a terror organization. Hamas still have terrorists operating within Gaza. Israel is still not safe. The south of Israel is still not safe. I really can't see what more Israel can do other than to take more care over to avoid civilian casualties. And it's very, very easy for Joe Biden to say that Israel shouldn't have hit the convoy. Of course it shouldn't have hit the convoy. Israel has apologized. It's fired 2 senior officers and suspended 3 others. But, Biden seems to forget the number of American troops and others killed in friendly fire in conflict in various parts of the world in which America has been involved. It does sadly happen. Israel made a huge mistake. It's a huge blunder. It's more than a blunder. It's a tragic blunder. But, I think nothing is served now by harping on about this. It's happened. Israel's apologized. It's not finished for the families involved or the friends. They're still feeling it. But I don't really see what more Israel can do other than to apologize for what was a huge blunder.
I mean, when you look at things going on in the Middle East at a larger, through a larger framework, you've now got Iranian-backed Hezbollah basically have taken over Lebanon. Once upon a time, that would have been a lovely place to go on holiday, probably less so now. You've got ISK, this new emerging bloc of ISIS, who are threatening football matches in Europe and bombed that Crocus arena in Russia. You've got the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels having a fun old time in the Red Sea, attacking cargo ships that is going to put a, huge risk of inflation going through the roof once again in the West. And yet, at the same time, Western powers suddenly seem to be very squeamish about backing Israel, when it's often said that Israel is on the front line when it comes to the battle against terrorism. How much is this sort of potential disintegration of this relationship, this sort of falling apart of support from the West of Netanyahu, going to put the wider world at risk?
I think Israel's cooperation with Western powers, particularly with America and Britain, when it comes to intelligence and fighting terror in that part of the world, I think this is vital. And I really don't see this coming to an end anytime soon. I really don't. And I still think the major powers will still be cooperating with Israel. It has been said, and I think there's more than little evidence to prove this, that Israel has often done the dirty work for some of the major Western powers. When it's come to targeted assassinations or taking action where the others didn't really want to be seen to be involved. So Israel, yes, Israel has been doing the dirty work for these superpowers, Western powers, and I really think that will probably continue, because I don't think they can actually manage without Israel.
The thing is, Paul, what I think about Sunak and Biden and other Western leaders is they're straws in the wind and they blow with publicity. They're affected by headlines. So, of course, millions of people all over the world are going, oh, it's terrible, all those Palestinians who are dying in that conflict. And it is terrible. However, there's a mission here. And Netanyahu said he wanted to destroy Hamas. One leading Israeli politician, whose name escapes me, said, well, look, if we have to stop now, you can't put out a fire by putting out 80% of it, which is what would be the situation. If you leave 20% of it, it will erupt again into fire. Now, so you're right, Hamas is winning the PR war, but because it's winning the PR war, Netanyahu is getting backed into a corner. And not so long ago, there were hundreds of thousands of IDF troops in Gaza. It's now down to 1,000. This lack of support from the West is very much affecting what Netanyahu said he was going to do, destroy Hamas. At this rate, he's just not going to be able to do this.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Israel has said that it was withdrawing troops before this latest round of criticism. And I think the operation has been scaled down. And as far as I see it, this operation will continue. And there will be targeted attacks on those cells where they believe that Hamas is still operating. But I think possibly because the strength of Hamas has been depleted to such an extent, I would think that Israel probably doesn't need quite the number of troops that were there previously.
What I think is quite interesting, when you look at the coverage of this war, it seems to me have been, well, largely one-sided, I would say. Obviously, it's very easy for broadcast purposes to get those sort of, drastic, dramatic television depictions of rubberized places in Gaza. But I was listening earlier on to an interview with IDF reservists, and one guy basically saying, well, look, I'm normally a student. I was called up to come and protect my country, and my job has actually been making sure that the citizens of Gaza have been kept safe and not caught in the crossfire with Hamas snipers. And he said, what will happen to me if I lose my life? No one's going to remember me, and if they do, they'll probably think that I was part of some sort of genocide. Do you think that there's been, the way that mainstream media has reported this war has impacted some of the geopolitical decisions being made by Western leaders today?
I don't think there's any doubt at all that the IDF is a very humanitarian outfit. And despite what it might appear on screen, on our newspapers, Israel does not deliberately target civilians. This is a war, and sadly, civilians are dying. And this is as this is Hamas's fault. Hamas, as we know, deliberately embeds itself in major population areas, in hospitals, in schools, anywhere where it is aware that if it gets hit, there are going to be civilian casualties. And you know what this young IDF man said is perfectly true. I mean, these are kids straight out of university. Some of them haven't even been to university. They're called up for their national service, and they are told exactly how to behave. And the IDF does behave in a very responsible way. It may not look like that when we see these images of the dead, the dying, and the injured, and the rubble all over the place, but unfortunately, this is a war, and this is what happens.